I'll make this short and brief today, but no, we'll continue to bring information to you. But the things we're going to share with you today are really the things that need to happen between now and mid-September. So they have not given really tight deadlines on when the totality of the plan will be done, but they do recommend that by mid-September that you have steps 1 and 2 done today. So those are the main steps I'll be going over with you today and hopefully share some ideas with you. I do want to address the elephant in the room on this published K-5 resource recommendation. We all know that that came out a few weeks ago. And there were only 2 vendors on there. And what's interesting is those vendors are at this conference today. They were Benchmark and Wonders by McGraw-Hill. So just a few reminders on that. There was an extensive process for vendors who went into that, and they had to fill out a checklist, and it had to meet K-5, all of the components of reading. So the 2 won out, and there has been a lot of discussion about that, but a couple of reminders for you. One, it was a stringent list that they had to fit. And if your current resource is not on there, don't throw it out. It may not mean that it's bad. It just didn't, your resource might cover a certain component. For instance, Pathways. Pathways wasn't on that list because it didn't cover all of the reading components, but it's still very strong phonetic programming. So you would want to keep that. Remember, the things on this list are just deeming those supplements that will get reimbursed from the state. So I think it's very much being inflated of our intensity. Of course, districts want to be reimbursed, so you want to be using things on the list, but I also think there's this false notion of, wow, now these are the only 2 things that are good out there, and that's not true. And the other thing is, I put in parentheses here, is there's a supplemental list coming. So the state is actually going to put out another RFP to vendors to say, okay, now it's not going to be the whole reading programming. We're going to let people who just specialize in phonics request to be considered for phonics, or like maybe the Step Up map book could be considered a supplemental resource for comprehension. So they're going to be releasing that. You're going to see another list. Let's not even talk about a deadline of when that might come, but there is another one coming for supplemental materials. So then again, you would be able to be reimbursed. They did talk about that. They want most districts, if you were on that list, of being able to be reimbursed and you were able to get that grant, they're going to ask for you to have most of it spent by September. But if you were allotted a certain amount of money, they're hopeful it will still be there. So when the supplemental list comes out, if you happen to be using anything on the supplemental list, you'll also be able to get reimbursed. A lot of that has nothing to do with the literacy plan, but it does. It's a hot topic. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you. Other things the state is doing to support this idea of literacy programming is they're continuing to provide letters training and reimbursement. They suggest districts should be reimbursing teachers for that. Keeping in mind, letters isn't programming, it's strategies. So you're still going to need to help teachers. Let's say you have all of your teachers go through letters training. You're still going to need to help them understand, where do the letters strategies fit into our phonetic programming. DESE is going to be publishing a webinar series, and they have a reading success plan guidance document. In a few slides, we'll take a look at the guidance documents that they are offering. So things are on there, but that's part of what we're trying to offer you in these courses, is really walk you through how to read and what actionable steps to take through these guidance things. So DESE recommended steps for phase 1, and I received this information through the Comprehensive Literacy Plan, CLSD. There's actually a group, a cohort of districts who've been going through this. This is on year 3. And so some of these suggestions, I want to thank them and the writing project had brought to my attention. So I'm just kind of sharing some of the work they shared at the conference yesterday. But I think it's important to realize that districts are going to need a literacy plan, and they said buildings will need an individual action plan. So there's really 2 things that are going on here, and the templates I've shown a little bit could be used for a district or a building plan. But keep that in the back of your mind that you're going to need. I would start with the district plan. And the very first step in that is to do a needs survey So whether you do Google Forms, I think this would be great on the form of this course if you wanted to type in some of the things you're doing, or maybe even share some of those questions. I think our group is hoping to kind of prepare some samples of that to share with you on this course as well. But you definitely need to take perceptual information from your teachers of what do you think is missing, what is going well with our reading programming, what do you think is missing, and then there's just a collection of data. Okay, so sometimes as building leaders, we think we know the problem. Teachers say a totally different one, which opens our insight. But again, data should always lead, as I know everyone on this call knows, comprehension, phonetic, looking at those screeners. I also want to encourage you, a screener is not an end all be all, especially for K through 2. For those of you who are using certain online, gosh, why am I blanking of all of them? STAR or some of these, that you really need to have multiple sources of data to identify if students are really struggling. And remember, with the new reading success plan, we're going to have to be doing those for any kiddo who is a grade level behind. I think sometimes with these online screeners, kids can tend to not do well. And we certainly don't want you to have to be doing a plan for every single child who might show up as a year behind on a screener, but yet if you pulled them as a small group or with a teacher to do a running record, FMP or DRA, they might seem fine. And so having this double way of looking at your data, what is it currently, and then thinking forward, how do we collect that and have it in a way that we have at least 2 data sources to make sure that kids are at the level we think they are before just putting them on a reading success plan. I know a lot of districts give the general screener, and if kids score 2 years behind, then they do an additional one. So maybe you don't have to do 2 data sources for all of them. I'm kind of jumping ahead because I am a nerd and a soapbox about that. But just make sure that you're looking at your current screener data, current reading data that you do have, common formative assessments in reading, and then taking what your teachers say. And that should give you a pretty good idea of how to go to phase 2, which is how to reflect on that to help determine your literacy priority areas. So some examples of that I think will be common for a lot of people is we don't have a systematic phonics program. That's what comes out of that data, is they're not doing well on that. Teachers mention it. Okay, that needs to be a priority for us. And that could lead into some supplemental resources and some professional development. Another example could be reading fluency. Let's say you have data on that. It's a big topic today at the conference. So I thought, fluency it goes phonemic awareness to phonics to fluency to comprehension. So if your kids are struggling with fluency, then maybe we need some professional development over that. As you review your data and start looking at these literacy priority areas, another recommendation they said is you really shouldn't have more than 5 areas you're focusing on, because we really want the plan to be doable. And what I'm recommending here are things that a district would come together at. Here's what we're thinking. And then you would push this into individual buildings in the fall and let them talk about, so what is our response now that we know these are the priority areas? The district could be very broad, and here's the data we're looking for. And then you would hand it over to buildings to make their individual action plans. I also wanted to share with you, I'm going to pop out of my presentation for a moment and just go ahead and hop on the DESE website. Again, I'm sure everyone who watches this or is on the call is aware how to get here, but the DESE website is always an enigma. So I just want to make sure, if you go under educators, it gives you a drop down to go to curriculum. And I'm going to scroll down here. You can see there is a literacy tab. So this is one way you can get to all of the things that I'm talking about today. DESE has released a lot of things. Here's their webinars. Here's those state approved lists we talked about, the reading success plan guidance, all of those things. So I just want you to know that it's here. Again, these courses that we're doing are trying to take you step by step with some actions, but I wanted to take a minute and make sure you know where to find these memos and things, because some of you might want to be printing it out and reading it from a different perspective. But I'm going to hop back over here. Let's see. So we talked about your steps today that we want to get done by mid-September, or this idea of researching, finding those priority areas. And I wanted to share some templates that were shared with me from other schools of how they've done that. And there were some commonalities in this template that I want to point out to you. If you're looking at this, I'm hoping that you can steal something from here. I'm trying to be very explicit and giving you an idea of what an artifact could be. But we always want the priority goal at the top and what's the research-based rationale behind it. So you might go back to that DESE list and look at research-based practices to fill this in. That's going to help guide your conversation. Then for this priority goal, what are our specific action steps? Who's involved? What's our timeline? And this is a common thing on each template I've seen here today is what's the indicator of success? So that's one format you could consider. Here's a sample too. It has essentially the same things, just organized differently. Priority goal with the research-based rationale right behind it. What's working? So I like that this template included it because it kind of honors the good things that we're going to keep using pathways, because pathways is working, but what's not working is maybe we don't have a great plan of training everyone who's coming in. So what are our action steps? We're going to train within a trainer and get people within our district to be trained to train those new people, if this makes sense. I will work up some examples on these templates so you can see how they're filled out. But I was hopeful that showing you these two templates, which I'll also link in the course, so you'll just have those and you could copy and paste or do what you will. But as you start getting your 5 or less priority goals, this would be a way that you can action plan and start filling it out. What I would love is if you're taking this course and walking through this journey with us, that you might be so bold as to even share at least a snippet of your plan, because the real goal of this is to be collaborative. So we're not working in isolation and we could be looking at each other's things and sharing. So what's next for you developing the CLP plan? Hopefully there's going to be continued information for us. That's the goal through this course, whether it be from us, the Lit Link. We're going to continue to bring you practical ideas and templates that you can use. And I also want to, as a former RPDC employee, I have to tell you that because all of this is related to that huge comprehensive literacy grant, and there are state consultants that you can use for free, and your RPDCs are doing trainings helping lead districts through that as well. So I'd be remiss not to mention that we're trying to offer that virtually to you. So as members, it's free and you don't have to travel, but I certainly wanted to let you know that they're doing that training as well. If you have questions or want more support, please make sure to reach out to us. If you have other things to add or other questions, we encourage you to post it on this forum and let us know, and we'll get back to you with Module 3 with even more information. Thank you.